Hi, Adrian.
Hey. All right. You cannot edit the settings of a Zoom call once it's already started. Good to know. Okay. Hi, how are you? So I was going to have you just join by phone, but I figured out if I just restart the meeting, you can. All right. Well. Excellent. I'm sorry for the inconvenience of having everybody leave and come back in. Thank you for doing that. Sanjeev, you're on mute, I think. All right.
Yeah. Hey, I was saying that I'm sorry because I would have checked earlier. So
no, it's my fault. I have some default settings that block. I have some. Usually we don't get international participation. So it didn't even occur to me that it might still be on that setting.
Perfect. So I think I hope I think I know it is an interruption, but I'm sorry for that. So let's continue then. I think.
Yeah, no, it's I'm giving just one or two more minutes for everybody else who still hasn't rejoined. We had about 20 something people on, so most people are back. It looks like
That's a very good
Brad
number.
is back. Okay, most people are coming back on. So yeah, we had a good two sessions before you. We spoke about some regional legislations in our states. So Virginia, state of Virginia, and just other places that people can use to track where these changes are, so that they know there is a new bill and they have to comply with it now. Then we also talked about some common standards that are universal to all of these bills, like having a sense of knowing where your data is, because no matter what the legislation is, you're going to have to find it. And there are some minor differences in what they define as private and personal, but for the most part, you're going to have to find that consumer and do something to them, either provide their data, or to correct their data, or to delete their data under the right to be forgotten. So we talked about just designing it from the ground up with privacy in mind, so that it'd be easier later on. So those are the things we kind of covered with our two earlier speakers. But I wanted to welcome you and thank you for joining us from DAMA India. And I know there's some legislation there, privacy legislation in India as well. I don't know if it's similar or if it's different, but we'd love to hear about it. And if you wanted to introduce yourself, please go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And as you rightly put forward already, I think you have set the stage already. So I'll start with my introduction. I'm Sanjeev, and we have formed DAMA India. It has been tried earlier, but I got to know from Peter Icon that it was failed. So I was talking to him, and he said that, Sanjeev, why don't you start and let's try that? And then looks like I'm feeling that we are very successful so far. I think a lot of people got into it, and then we are creating a lot of traction. So I am representing DAMA India. There are a couple of team members that we have. Other than that, what I do is that I am truly passionate about data, mostly the foundation. So what I say is that I love data, but I'm not a data scientist. So because I believe that there are a lot of foundational layers that we should really deal with before the data scientists or data insights can really work better. So I love to be at the bottom of the pyramid somewhere. This is foundation. We talk about a lot of data preparation, collection, quality, governance, privacy, personal data protection, and then making sure all of those are set. Hence, and so that people up there at the top, all the smart people can definitely do the insights. So I just jokingly talk around that you don't have to be a data scientist to love data. You can always love data. So that's me, and I run a show named Data Ki Baat. I'm from India, so Data Ki Baat is, data you all know, but Baat is basically talk. So it's all about having people come join me on my show and talk about data, not about the framework that we can easily find on the Google, but it's all about how and what they think, what are their learnings over the year of experience that they have, and share with me and the audience in India. So so that is all about me. And I approached you because I found this opportunity very unique, where we are talking about upcoming privacy legislation around the world. And I thought India is also undergoing certain phases where people are anticipating that the bill will arrive soon. We are waiting since 2018. So I am going to talk a little bit about the upcoming data privacy and personal data protection bill that is, people are waiting anxiously. So with that, am I also allowed to share a couple of slides? Okay, okay, perfect. Okay, so I can just share.
Yes, yes, now,
Okay,
yeah, you should have it now. Yep.
so I will share my screen and quickly walk you through certain. Uh, so okay, so this is me. I talked about myself. I represent DAMA India, and I run a show called Data Ki Baat. And the message that I always give is that if you can master your data, you can master your life. That's the message that I give. So and I will talk about that in some other call. But for this, the time sake, let's move on. So the topic that I wanted to cover today was basically around how India is shaping up for the privacy law, and how it compares with GDPR and CCPA, because that's the two well-known privacy legislation around the world. There are many, so I'll talk about that as well. So I wanted to keep this just to set a context, right? And the right is not what someone gives you, it is what no one can take from you. And that's the whole idea about the uh, uh, personal data protection and all, because I truly believe that individual is more responsible or equally responsible, as good as government is, right? You cannot just rely on government to form a rule and then kind of wait for that. You have to take the responsibility. So what that means is that you have to know your data duties and you have to know your data rights, both at the same time. So that's the the campaign that I ran in past for India, and I thought I'll share that. And it is very important that we individuals are also involved very much with the government hand in hand. And this is funny. So relying on government is not an idea, is what I kind of just said. So with that, we will jump into the conversation that I have for today. So I collected a couple of news clips that how no matter what, no matter how much you talk about it, no matter how much you care, data breach stories are going to be there. You have to deal with that. Irrespective of whatever law, whatever protection that you want to put, it is going to be there. So this is a recent story in India. There were some COVID data leak. There were some e-commerce website where people kind of they could not protect the data, and then it was leaked. And then obviously police department also had a lot of data issues over there, right? So this is one thing. And then what is happening in the government is this: we are waiting for a proper bill since 2018. So 2018, I ran a huge campaign around it because I was thinking that it is coming. So let's educate people, let make organization prepared, but nothing happened. We kept on waiting. 2019 passed, 2020, and then we are 2021, but still there is nothing. So what happens is that we cannot keep on waiting and let the data breach keep on happening, right? We got to do something. So I'm doing the awareness, but at the same time, people have to come up and then take the ownership. So that's the whole thought. I just shared this. So there are breach story, and then there are rules that is going to be coming. They are making it, it's taking forever. So where are we globally, right? Globally, we are. Now this is the data that I have taken from UNCTAD.org. It is available for everybody, but 66% of the countries have some kind of regulation. We have 19% of the countries where there is no data regulation. Fortunately, we are into 10% where there is a something going on. There is a draft, at least. There is some kind of a discussion happening. But then there are 5% of the country where there is nothing, actually. So we are into 10% somewhere here. Okay. So what is happening in India? So in India, it is being pursued. People are discussing, and we are calling it Personal Data Protection Bill. Right? It has happened in 2018, but then after that, in 2019, there was a revision because a lot of kind of opposition happened because people thought that it is not a great rule. There is a lot of loophole. The government is kind of too much, keeping the rights to themselves and not making it public. There is no public participation. All of those things happen, but hence the revision. So it is all about ensuring how we can protect, personal data in the country. And it was, obviously put in 2018, but 2019 is something that we revised. We are still waiting for the implementation. So, okay. I wanted to highlight a couple of things, and very quickly, I know you will probably make sense because you guys already had a good discussion here. So we have our roles defined inside that: data principal, data fiduciaries, data processor, and data authority. I think if you compare this with your GDPR or CCPA, you might probably want to call data principal data subject, right? And then data fiduciaries are nothing but a data processor. Those organizations who process that, and then there are processors who those organizations appoint on their behalf. So data fiduciaries and processor are basically interrelated. And then there is something called data authority in India, which is an independent body who would basically regulate and ensure that how this bill is going to be implemented. Are we following that? Is there any compliance issue? Are people falling in place? Is organization falling and trying to come, really abide by the rules or not? Those, that authority will be, called Data Protection Authority, DPA. So that's the biggest, big rule or big bucket into the bill that India is talking about. Then obviously we have anything that we are trying to create. There has to be some, goal to it, right? There has to be some method in the madness, right? So the whole idea is that how do we protect personal data? How do we create a trustful relationship between the individual and the organization in India? And then there are, various, I would say, lot of points. I think if you really read that document, 72 pages, you will feel that it is all about how do we ensure that there is a good regulation around collection, usage, storage, and processing of personal data. I don't think it is any different than GDPR or CCPA, or for that matter, the rule that is coming in your area. That's pretty much same. Any questions so far before I move to the next slide? Okay, by that time, you know that it is impacting, obviously it is affecting India mostly, but also to the organization who are operating from India, even if they're outside. So that's pretty much same for the GDPR also. CCPA also talks about that. So it is citizen of India, the individual, the data principals, and anybody who is trying to use their data, no matter where they are. So those are the kind of scope of this bill. Okay, this I'll not spend much time. I know it is very common across, but like you said, using rightly in the beginning, that personal data and sensitive data, and we know that what we are talking about: health data, financial data, biometric health. Those are all basically sensitive data, and then there are personal data. That is what the scope of the entire bill is, and that is what we need to protect. That's the we have talked about in the GDPR also there are penalty. I wanted to really highlight that there is a penalty for people not abiding by the rule if it is implemented. It's not yet implemented, as you know, but there is a lot of discussion around that. Obviously, it is hefty if you compare GDPR and CCPA. So it is like 4% of the global turnover or 2% of the global turnover in different cases. But these are the two various hefty penalties that I thought I will highlight here. And most important thing is that I talked about the duties and data duties and your data rights. So we should know as an individual what are my duties and what are my rights. So I highlighted 4 key important points here. What is put under the bill: that right to confirmation and right to information. So it is very common to GDPR also. People are allowed to really request in a clear and concise manner that what are the information that you are storing about myself, how are you using it, why are you using it, what are the purpose, how long are you going to use it, and all of those questions. And organization needs to provide that information in a written format, in a clear, concise information, so that people can use it. There is also a clause of portability. So for example, you cannot just only provide me the information, you should provide me the information so that I can port it to any other system or any other processor and all of those. So data portability is also very important there. Rights to correction. If my information is wrong, if I am represented, in a not appropriate way, or maybe my information is not correct, I have a right to ask for the correction piece. Then I talked about right to data portability. People can always ask and take it in a portable format. Which should be processable by the computer as well. And then finally, the last one, everybody knows about it, rights to be forgotten. But I want to highlight here that it is not same as right of erasure. In GDPR, it is different. Here it is right to be forgotten. That means you cannot request that my data to be deleted. Government has a right to, or the data fiduciaries has a right to not delete it, but they will not use it. So there is a lot of debate around that. And what I heard in 2019 provision, they started calling it right to erasure also. So we are very close to the GDPR now. Earlier it was not. So any questions so far on this individual rights?
This looks very similar to, hopefully that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know still there are a lot of things because people will keep finding mistakes, or they might just want everything to be perfect the day one. I mean, I think what I feel is that it just has to start somewhere rather than trying to make it a perfect one at the very beginning. I mean, we can always go and get the remediation done later on, but yeah. And then obviously there are a couple of factors, grounds of processing personal data. I think it is very similar to what we have already probably have discussed in this call, right? It has to be consent based. It has to be, it could be processed when the government or parliament need this. So for the government purpose, if we have to comply with the law, that point in time, we have to really have a rights to, use and process that data. Any kind of a prompt action if it is needed, like if there's a medical emergency, like COVID, for example, then government has a right on that, and then they can, freely process that any disease or a breakdown or some kind of a calamity, right? And then obviously purpose of employment, recruitment, provision of employment benefit, or passing any benefit to the government. Like for example, we have various policies in India that gives benefit to the consumer, citizen directly. So for that we need to know you. So hence those are the clause that there is a ground of processing for that applicable. And then obviously reasonable purpose for the credit score purpose, for the recovery, for all the prevention and detection of unlawful activity, and all of those good things that is required to run the state or the parliament or the country as such, right? So those are the permissible ground of processing for the data. I think in my mind, when I compared these three rules, I found it very similar, mostly GDPR. I know CCPA is in a way different, but it is very close to GDPR. Okay. And then finally, we have what are the responsibilities of government, of the organizations, right? When they, as a data fiduciary or a data processor, they have to basically ensure that there is a fair and reasonable processing of the data. It has to be purpose driven because, I mean, there has to be a reason why something is, very, very clearly, specifically mentioned. And there has to be a way to, a subject or a data principal to have given the consent that yes, and if the purpose is done or fulfilled, then there has to be a provision to how have you stopped it now, because the whole purpose or the ground of collecting the data is now fulfilled. Are you, have you stopped it, or those kind of a clause also is there. And if it is being used, people can always go and claim and raise application to the DPAs, which is basically a independent body to monitor all of this. Then collect only necessary data, which is very obvious. GDPR clearly states that as well, that we have to only collect what is necessary, what need to be known, and not anything else that is not applicable to the particular probably purpose. Lawful processing, following all the ground rule of processing that I talked in the last slide. Notification, what is collected, how it is collected, how it is processed, where it is stored, how long I will store. I should know as a country of India, I mean, a citizen of India, always, I should have a right to know all of those. Then quality of the data. Me as a data principal or a subject cannot be misrepresented. So I have a right to ask for those correction and the data processor or a data fiduciary need to abide by that and make sure that they represent me in a right, right data has to be represented. And then finally, storage. There were a lot of discussion around that where do we store it? Can we take it outside country? All of those data localization is something that was a big debate. And a couple of changes has happened from 2018 to 2019. In 2018, we talked about it cannot go outside. But in 2019, what we are telling is that personal data can go outside with some clause. Sensitive personal data cannot go outside. It has to be within the country, but it can also go given certain situation. So it is now becoming a little flexible because a lot of organizations were not happy with this because there are a lot of implication to their business model, to their data or IT infrastructure, because they will have to probably rethink about where they keep their server, how do they integrate and all of those. So there were a lot of cost pressure coming onto the organization. So they really opposed it big time. And there is some adjustment being made. That is one of the reasons why this bill is getting delayed, by the way. So data storage was a big, I would say, debate and questionable item over there. So finally, I'm coming to, I think I compared in a way, but I also kept a slide where I quickly summarized what I just talked about, right? And I'm sure you guys will remember all of this, but the PDP, GDPR, and CCPA, I just try to compare that what and when. What that means is that when PDP started, when GDPR, and when CCPA, and what they really, what are the different role and naming convention over there, like data subject, here is data principal. And then similarly, we have a consumer, in the CCPA. CCPA is already live, GDPR is already live. PDPB for India is not yet live, and we are waiting for that. To whom it is applicable, pretty much GDPR, PDPB are same, but CCPA is different. It's basically for for-profit businesses and all, and they are doing business in California. All of those differences. There are different penalties also as compared to GDPR and PDPB, but yeah, I mean, it is CCPA has got a different purpose, I think, and it is much more, I would say, very focused to a business. But this PDP, PB, and GDPR is very much focused on the subject, the principle, and protecting the right. In fact, in India, it is also a fundamental right. I don't think GDPR states that. It's in India, it says that it is like under the legislation, Republic of India, it is your fundamental right. That is how the rule is being made. That is how the bill is being made. So it is really a part of the overall, I would say, democratic that ecosystem here. And it is clearly stated in the bill if you read. It is a fundamental right of the citizen here that way. So it is it's all about how and who is impacting. Penalties, I think I talked about. It's pretty much same for GDPR if you really see 2% of the global annual turnover, and that matters because sometimes what happens, right? This regulations doesn't impact people unless it comes and bite us. Nobody cares. It is probably in India, I can tell because I've been trying hard, but people are waiting and watching. Nobody really start to prepare early. They wait for rules to come and then they will rush. They will create a kind of a chaos and probably fail. But this penalty plays a big role. You can scare people with the penalty that, okay, if you are not complying, then probably you'll have to pay a hefty price for that. And hence it also drives sometime. I know it is not the only means or way to do that, but this is one of the way to really make people aware that, okay, if you're not getting the whole idea of why you should do the data protection, better you know the financial implication. So then people will understand, I guess. The next one is basically all the terms and definition. I think what I'll do is that I have created a lot of infographics and shared with the Indian audience. After this call, I can share that bundle with all of you that defines all the key terms and definition, and you can compare it with your GDPR or CCPA. Personal data, sensitive personal data, anonymization. They are basically same terminology, but little different in the CCPA, but mostly in the GDPR, we are same. Data fiduciary is a data controller, data processor is data processor over there. So that way you can really compare apple to apple and then know that, okay, you are probably aware of all these three rules. Okay. So I'll share that, infographics after this call as a zip file and you can probably use it. Ground up processing, again, I compared this side by side. I think I talked about in the last slide. You can always read through this and we can probably have a bigger and better discussion, keeping time in mind. So then finally it is rights, rights to be informed, right to be accessed, rights to object rectification, data portability, all are basically matching with PDPB. But if you really see at the last line here, right to eraser was never there in the PDPB earlier. It was brought into PDPB in 2019 remediation. But if you see CCPA, they still call it right to deletion, and it is real deletion. I have done that myself for my organization. People do request and we have to really delete them. But in India, it is not like that. There are still a lot of clause that you can probably not delete it, but let's see how it goes. Okay. Perfect. I think I'm at the end of the slide. But the question that I asked when I ran this campaign, that, I mean, how to confidently confront and successfully meet data privacy and security requirement under increasingly complex regulatory environment. So basically what is happening is that things are changing very fast, right? Are we as fast catching up with that? I mean, what are the different ways we can do that? Can we really keep pace with this changing environment? It is so complex, right? The only way that I see is that by doing a couple of things that I highlighted, and it is not in order, but I just jotted down which I feel is very important. We got to really think from the data culture perspective. That's the only starting point I see personally, right? And then we have to also look at formalizing data stewardship. Generally, what happens when we talk about data stewardship, we just go outside and start reporting. I'm thinking anybody inside the organization is the better data steward than anybody outside, because they wouldn't know what's happening. They wouldn't know the data lineage. They wouldn't know all the metadata. They wouldn't know all the business rules. They will not know anything and they will take some time. So better you start from internal people who are having that tribal knowledge in their head, and you can utilize them to really figure out what are your data footprint, and then you can figure out how to comply with the regulations that you're talking about. And then finally, you have to really conduct the data privacy assessment. You have to really be looking at various ways of doing the assessment. I know there are many ways to do it. There are a lot of framework that offers some template. You can try that. But at the same time, I also believe that there is no hard and fast rule that works for one organization. It is based upon what you are trying to do. Where are you at this moment, in which country, which geography, and based upon that, you have to tweak that framework and put it into a practice. So, so there is no one fit rule for anything. And then finally, you have to obviously discover. I think you talked about that discovery piece. You have to define also, because GDPR says something else. Probably the PDPB will say something else. You have to define what problem you are trying to solve, or what is your scope. So if you have your scope defined, you will be able to deal with the problem very well. And then create the inventory of personal and sensitive personal data. We often forget to do that. There is a massive documentation need out here. There are some automation also possible, probably a data cataloging tool, but probably not, because you can always start the process manually and then see that are you able to do this manually, and then you can fit the tool rather than bringing the tool and fitting the process. I would suggest better to better to fix the process first and then fit the tool. Otherwise, probably it will just not work. I have seen that not working for many clients. They bought the tool, best of the tool, but that didn't work, right? Because they were not ready with all their data asset. They did not discover, they did not define, they had nothing to feed into the tool, and tool didn't work, obviously, right? And then finally, this is the last step, very complex step. I have seen people struggling big time on having a data lineage, because if you know the flow entirely, you will probably be able to figure out that at what point you are getting and dealing with the personal and sensitive personal data. And that would be the places that you put the control and governance in place. And I think in no order, probably if you can follow this, you'll be very well, be able to get started. because the rule is still coming. It is not yet come. So better to start preparing now. That's the message I kind of wanted to give. Okay. Yep. And there are a couple of opportunity ahead, and which is very obvious. I'm just repeating that how do we create a repeatable process? Because everything is changing very fast outside, rules are changing, regulations are coming, and how we can easily make our business comply with those population, no matter where are you living. Using you just told, right? No matter which country you are, but you have to just comply. You have to really follow certain things. Maybe it will be GDPR or CCPA or PDPB, but you have to just comply by the regulation of your country. So it's not about the country. It's about basically, uh, looking at your footprint, figuring out, and then trying to implement slowly, steadily. So with that, I am open for the questions.
Wow, thank you.
So yeah, that's what I had. If anyone has any question to me, and I will try to answer here. If not, then I will go back and get answer, because this rule is still in draft. It is very legal, and whatever I understood, I think I have presented here. So I'm open for questions if anybody has.
There are a couple of questions in the chat,
Okay.
and I was going to also ask one. And there's a lot of similarities to GDPR, and one thing we talked about with the penalties. This is very similar to the penalties of GDPR. In other words, if you are a large company, it's a percentage of your revenue that is the fine. So that could be pretty large if you're
Pretty
a
large
company. Yeah. So it's pretty important to comply. The one difference I think I saw, and I don't remember seeing this on our California or GDPR legislations, is you had a slide about only capturing data that is a legitimate business purpose.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know that the other two, I don't know that our other laws had that stipulation. If somebody came and said delete it, you have to delete it. If somebody came and said yes, right there, collect only necessary data. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know that I remember that being the case for the other two legislations. Our two other speakers are gone, but that's an important point, because I think companies would take whatever they thought might be helpful, and then just, okay, well, if people ask me to delete it later, I can always delete it. But this says, okay, actually, even before you start to collect it, you have to think about, you have a business purpose or not to keep this data, right?
Yeah, and that's where this ethics, ethos, and all of those big thing comes, and that is more, people perspective, right? So that is why I stress a lot on people perspective. I know it is very hard to say. I know it's very hard to follow. Easy to say. That imagine business ethics here, right? That why would I collect, more than what I need? I mean, that's the question, right? I think I always ask. I know it is very hard, because there is a data monetization that made everybody think that, okay, let's collect because we can monetize.
Right.
So we all forgot that very key aspect of the doing business is that business ethics. And I was writing a post, like postcard, which used to be very open earlier. And the question somebody asked that, okay, where was the data privacy rule when the postcard was there? I mean, we never worried that the postman might just read all of my information, right? But we still wrote the postcard, because the person was not only, person was not having any rule or any bill, or not even a understanding of the data privacy or protection. He only was carrying his personal business ethics, that my job is to only deliver and not read. So that's what I mean to say. I know it is very philosophical, but if I have that piece in my mind, probably this just works. And hence I said, right, it is you who can probably make all the rule work. Otherwise, every time you will find a loophole out there, and you will just work out for anything that is given. So collecting only what is necessary is really important. We just do that mistake day in, day out. I work and I tell people that, okay, Sanjeev, I need only 4 columns. I said, okay, what are the different columns you have? Okay, 2 more columns, but we don't need that. Okay, let's catch it. No, we might just need it.
Right.
So I just add 2 more columns. I do that. No, in my day-to-day job, I just
Right.
add those query and add 2 more columns just because I want to keep it. Who knows? Somebody will ask me. No? So I collected more than I needed, and that's what happens actually. So I think it's a
It
different.
does. Yeah,
Yes.
just in case. But then now it's one more. It's 2 more columns you have to worry about. If somebody asks for their data to be deleted, now you have to
Yeah.
do more work to make sure there is.
Yes.
Somebody asked if there is a any sort of a unique identifier. In the United States, we have a social security number. Is there anything like that in India?
Great question. Yeah, there is something called Aadhaar card. But you know what? Unfortunately, there were a lot of not issue I would say, but there were a lot of question and suspicion around that because it was also leaked, and it was a massive program. I will say entire world. It has not happened anywhere. That level of identification and codification, like giving everybody, identifying them, collecting their biometric information, collecting their personal information, and giving them a unique identifier. It has never happened anywhere in the world because of the reason that we are probably the second biggest democracy, population also, right? Yeah. So after China, it is India in population. Hence, it was so massive. But it is, I would think that there has to be a lot of awareness because I just share my Aadhaar card because somebody came and asked that, okay, I need to process your tax. Can you send me the photocopy of or a Xerox of your Aadhaar card? And I just share. I'm not consciously thinking that I should start protecting that information. But in US, I know a lot of friends and I've been there. It is not easy. If I ask you to give me your social, you will not even give me. You will just ask me a lot of questions, and you might just say that, what is this? I can't, because you guys understand clearly that it is your responsibility to protect that information because lot is at stake. But here we are not getting it. So I think slowly there is a lot of requirement, understanding people. Again, I will keep saying people. It starts from me and with everybody, citizens, right? So
Yeah.
yep, there is Aadhaar card, by the way, short answer.
Yeah. Yeah. People are sensitive about giving that out, and even how they give it out. If you
Yeah.
say email it to me, well, email is not secure. I can text you my social if you really need it, like for a doctor or somebody. But yeah, it's
We have something called PAN card also. I mean, that means my all financial can be accessed, attached, because I file tax with the help of PAN card, personal, account number, that account identification that government has given. So PAN number is mandatory for every individual who is paying tax. And I'm sure that during my 19 years of service, I might have given every year to at least one person. I'll tell you, because they are filing my tax for me, and I just think it is just normal, right? I never thought, but the more I am getting into this whole thing, I'm trying to question that. But did I stop it for the social, the time and place that I am? I may not be doing that right now, but it is a need, and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. If anybody wants to unmute and ask their question, feel free.
Hi, this is Lori Radizak from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm really impressed that you're able to join us from India. It must be very late at night for you. I was wondering about international cooperation on coming up with, if not law, maybe standards, like maybe the United Nations or something like the ISO or something could come up with an international standard, because as more and more countries and more states within countries come up with these laws, it's going to be harder and harder for anyone to comply with them. Do you know of any international cooperation going on regarding this?
Yes. So I'll go a little bit, back, that how it happened. So it started, way back before even 2018, it was floored in the parliament. But there was a committee formed which comprised of a lot of people internally and externally. I think GDPR by that time was like very famous. It is basically one of those. And it was also considered, a lot of people consulted people outside, and there were a lot of collaboration that has happened before forming this. And then goal was to really not copy the GDPR, but if you really notice, it just happened because there is no equivalent comparison available during that point in time in the entire world, if I'm not wrong, right? GDPR was de facto for personal data protection and data privacy, right? So obviously there is a influence and kind of I would say things have taken knowingly or unknowingly, right? And that's good. Nothing wrong in it. But at this moment, I think that India is uniquely positioned to probably create uh, I would say a different kind of a standard altogether, or maybe redefine that for the couple of reasons. One, the population, right? The GDP growth, the internet user that we have, the adoption of mobile phone, and then I think the growth, let's call it over to, because we are constantly facing and growing and changing things around from the government level, digitization, everything else, right? So those challenges are making us think and probably add different values, which was probably not there when GDPR was formed, right? So I think a lot of things will be driven. The position at this moment, we are uniquely positioned, and kind of trying to arrive, right? But yes, the answer is it was definitely consulted, and a lot of collaboration happened, still happening, because there are in the panel there are a lot of people from different field of I would say industry as such. So yes, it is being consulted like that.
Yeah, thank you. I think standards are easier to define for what constitutes personal information. I think where countries negotiate political process-wise is how many rights you can give to somebody versus how much protection for the company you want to offer. And I suspect those can vary slightly, but the foundation will be pretty similar.
The flip side is also true. If you really see it, we talked about personal data protection. There is something called non-personal data governance also. So India has already released that massive bill. I did that one campaign around. So as soon as government come up with some rule, I kind of go and read it and try to share with my community here, right? So I looked at that, and it is very much contrasting, right? Once we are talking about personal data protection, at the same time we realize that not only that personal data need to be managed, but we also have a non-personal data, massive data, right? How can you ignore that piece? Because ultimately those non-personal data also makes up into that personal data. Because if you really combine those, you can always, so there is a relation, there is a fine line, right? So we cannot ignore that piece. So that is also simultaneously parallel running, and we are trying to learn from that piece. But the driver is different. Here we are trying to protect people fundamental right. There we are trying to make sure that we are growing as an economy, like digitization. There's a drive called Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is like independent India or maybe digital India. But how that will happen when we are able to protect people and their fundamental right, but at the same time not stop the growth. And where the growth comes is all those data that we are not talking about, non-personal data, right? How do we govern that? How do we ensure that there is a lot of innovation around it? How do we create data democratization? If I'm not allowing people to freely use the data, then there can be no innovation. But at the same time, I have to protect also, because if I just give it for free or maybe just make it open, then you know what would happen. People, personal data might also be at stake. So there is a fine balance between the control and letting people innovate, and that's a tricky proposition, or that's a tricky place to be in, and that's where these whole challenges are. So I think those are things happening. I think non-personal data governance is unique area. I think in one of the opportunity we can always talk about that. That's a very different thing, and probably India is one of the few countries where it is happening right now.
Yeah, that balance is tough. Well, thank you for joining us. I think it's a lot of familiar themes from the other legislations, and we're going to post this the other two talks as well. We're going to post it to our YouTube channel.
I missed that, and I think I know one of the area which I was very interested in I just forgot the name. Sorry, I'm trying to recall the name. Slowly, I will learn. But there was a way to automatically generate the privacy. What do you call that website? Uh, Legal notice, right? There is
Mm.
some company that came today, right? I forgot the name of the company, but I am personally very interested in knowing that because that's a struggle. I mean, if I'm creating a website, I don't know how to really put that, and I cannot deal with ever-changing legal compliance and everything else. But that company is really doing a great job. I mean, if it is happening, I need to know. But I thought that was one of the sessions. I missed that.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, you can play, but yeah, and Termageddon was one, and they were talking about the ways to keep up with kind of what you were just talking about, how you know when the new legislation comes out, you spend some time reading it and understanding what it means, even if it's not passed yet. You're thinking about if it gets passed, how you're going to adapt. So they were talking about resources. You can search for legislation so that you can be ahead of the game. And yeah, there's the website privacy policies are a whole separate area where you're
yeah,
disclosing how you use the data, why you're collecting it, what you're going to do with it, and that. We didn't actually dive too much into that, but that's a whole nother part of the,
yep, yep. No,
the website.
I think I will love to know more about it. But nonetheless, right? This kind of a rules, regulation, legislation, whatever you call it, basically help you drive the bigger agenda. And the bigger agenda is nothing but data governance. Because as soon as you handle the data governance, you are automatically handling privacy, right?
Right.
So people will sometimes organization hesitate to give you the budget. They will not give you the money to do that, right? But if you show this kind of a stick, legal stick or
Right.
legal threat, let's call it, then they will immediately release the budget
Yeah.
because there is a compulsion to comply with the rule, and then that drives the whole data governance because it's very hard to get approval for, right? People struggle. How do I convince my manager to give me budget for data governance? I mean, this is one of the way they
Yeah.
can show that.
That's so yeah, then the first session we talked about some of the new tools are very focused on only compliance addressing CCPA, GDPR, but other tools are more foundational, like a data catalog is something that has been around before, and we talked about searching for data that you may not know, all the instances where somebody has a social security number stored, for example, but also data catalog is, like foundational things that are, like you said, this is the stick, but it drives some of the investments, but some of them may have been things we were already advocating for that are important for data governance. And if you have them, it's easier to find the data when these regulations come out. So.
Very, very much. So I had one of the session with Nicola. I think mostly people will know her. She's from UK, and she called herself the data governance coach. And we did the campaign together where we talked about that how these kind of regulations drive the bigger agenda, like data governance or maybe your data cataloging need, right? That's very important because if you are not able to discover what you have got, probably you will not be able to manage that, right? So it becomes very important that you are able to discover, and that's the only way. There is only one way, data cataloging, right? So all of those topics can be really a different topic and vast topic in itself, which we can touch someday, but very interesting, exciting rather.
Yeah. Well, I'll post the video for the other two and email you when they're ready. But thank you so much for joining us. This was good. Yeah.
I was asking that, do we have a YouTube channel or something?
We have a DAMA Philadelphia YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send you the link to it. I'm not sure if it's searchable or if it's hidden, but it's just called DAMA. I think it's philadama@gmail.com.
Okay, I'll look for it. And then I'm also going to take this opportunity to really say that I am into a different kind of a drive as an India chapter to meet everybody. When I say meet everybody, I always felt that there was a gap that people chapter were not talking to each other. So I am doing that drive. I think I updated into the President Council meeting as well, that I am meeting everybody personally and inviting them to visit India virtually and interact with the user and audience over there on some subject of your interest. For example, if you have a data governance, you're welcome. So, we will
Thank
talk
you.
about that. But I thought, let me take this opportunity to invite you and or any one of your team who thinks that they can come and contribute over there and speak to the audience over there and get a different perspective. So that will be great. Right? So,
It's
thank you very
it's
much.
one of the things that, a lot of things have been difficult this year, but it's actually gotten easier to collaborate internationally with other chapters. That's the one thing that has been a positive through this new way of working. I really enjoyed connecting with. We're all talking about the same things, our chapters.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the first guest was Howard Diesel from South Africa, chapter, DAMA chapter. But now I'm looking out to really expand and meet, like I'm meeting today. And thank you very much for inviting. And then similarly, you are also welcome, and then talk to my, community over there and then share your thoughts. Okay.
Thank you. I would love to.
Perfect. I'm
All
so
right.
happy to that. And thanks for all the questions that, people asked me. And I'm really feeling, privileged, and thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, and good night. Everybody else, have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.